today we'll be talking to returning guests Huda Ammori and Max Geller from the direct action group Palestine Action. They are continuing their campaigns against Elbit Systems, the largest private Israeli arms manufacturer, which has factories and facilities across the UK, actually in many countries, but we'll be talking about the UK, including sites that design and are involved in manufacturing deadly drones that are being used in the genocide in Gaza right now, like Elbit's Hermes 450 drone. As well as murdering Palestinians on October 7th, these drones, it should be noted, have even been used to bomb many Israelis who were captured by Palestinian fighters. And that's an important detail, often forgotten amid all the false claims about Palestinian atrocities that day. Now, there's been a long and storied history in the UK of nonviolent resistance to the arms trade. But Palestine Action has really been the first group to campaign against a company like Elbit in a sustained campaign of direct action over many years. And it's been able to do so because of growing support it's received, including from local communities, which often had no idea of the presence of, say, an Israeli drones part factory in their neighborhood. It's also significant that on several occasions, British juries have refused to convict Palestine Action members for damaging property, and they've accepted the arguments that such actions are legally justifiable because they aim to prevent far greater harm in the form of Israel's war crimes and genocide. Palestine Action has seen significant victories, and last time Huda was on the live stream, which was in March, she told us that Palestine Action had managed to shut down 2 Elbit facilities in the UK, its factory in Oldham and its headquarters in London. And they also pressured 4 other companies which were providing services to Elbit to withdraw those services. So it's no doubt due to their persistence and effectiveness that Palestine Action is a primary target of the British government's growing repression of the Palestine Solidarity Movement. And right now, several of their activists are currently being held as political prisoners in British jails, including co-founder Richard Barnard, who is facing so-called terrorism charges. And many other activists have had their homes ransacked by police. So let's go to Huda and Max and welcome them back to the program.
Hi, Huda and Max. So good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to try and do this. We're going to hope that the sound is okay. If not, we're gonna do our best to adapt. But let's get right into it, Huda. We'll talk more about the repression that you're facing, but first update us on how the campaign is going. What are the significant developments or victories you've seen since you last spoke to us in March?
Yeah, so last time we shut down 2 Elbit facilities in this country, and recently we permanently closed down another one of Elbit weapons factories in Staffordshire. It was a factory that produced parts for Israeli tanks, and after sustained direct action against the site, the profits had reduced by 75% because of their increased security costs, and eventually they had to sell the site to a new company who have distanced themselves from doing anything to do with the military or anything to do with Israel and Elbit. And now the factory is making parts for public transport. So quite a transformation from making parts for Israeli tanks to parts for public transport. We've also had other companies since cut ties with Elbit Systems and major divestments from places like Scotiabank, who have more than halved their investment in Elbit Systems, who are the largest foreign shareholder in the company. So we continue to see huge victories, but also every single action we have is a victory against Elbit Systems. Every time we manage to shut them down, break into their facility, expose vulnerabilities, and we're able to stop them being able to manufacture these weapons, which they market as battle tested on the Palestinian people. And the actions have not stopped. If anything, they have intensified.
Can you give us an update on Richard Barnard's hearing that Ali mentioned happened earlier today? Tell us what he's facing and what happened at the hearing.
Yes, so just to clarify, Richard isn't in prison. He's released on bail. And today he had his first hearing for new charges. These are 3 different charges for 2 speeches that he made in October last year. 1 count of Section 12, 1A under the Terrorism Act, which is inviting support for prescribed organization, Hamas, and 2 counts for encouraging criminal damage, as they say, against Israeli weapons factories under Section 44 of the Serious Crime Act. What's interesting about this is that or disturbing, I should say, is that the Section 44 offences, we were both charged with that, and we went to trial at the end of last year. And they said because we encouraged direct action against Elbit Systems, that we should go to trial on those charges. We defeated those charges. We were unanimously acquitted by a jury, and now they are retrialing him on exactly the same charge for calling for direct action once again. So it's very vindictive, but this time they're adding the terrorism element in a bid to really try and persecute Richard, but by doing so to send a message to the movement, to try and intimidate us into stopping our movement, which is not going to work. But he has now been referred to the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court in London, and so he'll have another hearing on October 4th.
And Huda, I do apologize about that error, and I'm glad to hear that Richard is not in jail. And just to clarify, are there members of the group who are currently in detention?
Yes, so we currently have 16 political prisoners right now, 10 of whom were detained under the Terrorism Act. They were actually held in military confinement for a week, interrogated repeatedly, not given adequate amounts of food, before they were charged with non-terror offences and remanded to prison. So remand means being held in prison before trial. That happened after 6 of them had broken into Elbit's new research facility in Bilton, Bristol. And this facility was obviously very precious to Elbit, spent £5 million building it, and activists had managed to break inside despite it supposedly being highly secured. And when they were inside the facility, they destroyed, this is on video, Israeli quadcopter drones, the same model of drones we're seeing used in Gaza, the same model of drones that we've seen mimic the sounds of women and children crying, so they lure Palestinians and kill them. Those were inside that site, and they managed to destroy them. And in a bid to punish them and deter them, they held them under the Terrorism Act, abusing counter-terrorism powers. We have another one, Francesca, who published a letter on electronic Intifada, who's being held as well in Wakefield, who took action against Barclays and also against an American weapons factory. And we also have 5 who've been sentenced in Scotland for taking action against a weapons factory in Glasgow.
That is, of course, people putting themselves at great personal risk to do this work. Max, we've just heard from Huda that she and Richard were acquitted by a jury on very serious charges. Of course, that doesn't mean that the British state is going to give up. And just a couple of days ago, Palestine Action announced that another jury refused to convict 4 actionists who cost Teledyne's weapons factory over £500,000 in damages. That's probably, I think, around $750,000, by disrupting the production of Israeli missile parts. And this acquittal came even though the judge had sharply restricted the defenses that the accused individuals were allowed to make, and yet the jury still refused to convict them. But I understand they are going to be retried because it was a hung jury. The question I want to ask you, Max, to comment on that, why you think juries are doing this, and talk about, you've been an activist in the Palestine Solidarity Movement for many years in both the US and now the UK. Why did you choose Palestine Action and to get involved in this kind of work when you moved to the UK, knowing the kind of risks that are involved? And what's the significance of how quickly it appears to have won victories that have eluded other kinds of movements who've been working for an arms embargo or an end to the arms trade for years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the news that you're referring to, at the Teledyne action that the British state failed to convict on, this is an excellent news story. This is really a beautiful story that we can all celebrate together. They had these four activists, the government felt like they had them dead to rights. There was no defenses available to them. The destruction of this weapons factory was on video, and yet during a genocide, a British jury of these four actionist peers refused to convict them. And I think this is the silent majority speaking here. After a full year of ineffective marching, marches that don't yield the results that we've all been, desperate for, it's nice to see true democracy in action. Even though the British state won't listen to its people, the judge had no choice but to listen to this jury and set those four actionists free. It's also, I think, indicative of why you see the state coming up with these new types of charges for Palestine actionists. If juries will not convict, they have to come up with a way of detaining indefinitely without charge. And the Terrorism Act provides that. It is one of the most draconian and fascist legal apparatuses available to the state. These victories that Huda is discussing are coming, in spite of an extremely repressive new British government. The speech Richard Barnard gave was back in October when there was a different administration in power. That administration, a Tory administration, a conservative government, refused to charge Richard. And but this liberal new government had no problem using the Terrorism Act to try and shut down Palestine Action. It just goes to show, I think, how effective we are, because if we weren't effective, they wouldn't be trying to throw terrorism charges at us. It's in the same way that I don't think YouTube would be censoring your live stream if it weren't such an important platform. I think all of these things are extremely related, and it feels extremely empowering to be part of an organization that is willing to to do what's necessary during a genocide to stop it. I mean, the 16 people who are in jail are truly some of the most noble, beautiful souls I've ever met, and I know a bunch of them. I've never had this experience, in my years of activism where so many of my friends are in jail right now. It's part of the reality that we're all living in, and these people are just like me. They're just like, they're from similar backgrounds, and they're like, determined to stop this genocide with their own hands. And I can just say that, like, at these trials, the response from the public is really wonderful and scary to the British authorities, because at today's hearing there was over 100 people outside, and I get, I'm one of the people who's on the prisoner support teams, and we're getting letters from inspired people all around the world. All around the world, people are paying attention to how the British government are treating our brave actionists. And they're saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This isn't consistent with what's going on. There's something really the matter here. And I think it's clarifying for people.
And Max, what are you calling on people to do in support of these political prisoners? What are the kinds of things people watching today can do to support them?
It's a great question. As of right now, we have two of our actionists who are being held in violation of their rights, without phone and without communication from the outside world. Every single one of their letters has been censored and withheld from them so far. And we're talking about dozens a day. They're all across the UK. People are sending in postcards to these actionists, and I think they're up on the screen now. And the prison warden has refused to deliver their mail. So we
and
have
their names there, just on the screen, William Plastow and Ian Sanders, for those who are listening to the broadcast and not seeing it. Sorry, Max.
No, not at all. And so we have started a letter writing campaign to the warden demanding that she give William and Ian their mail as consistent with British law. They've also been denied phone calls for no reason. It's just another way of punishing Palestinian activists for the crime of being in solidarity and against the British state.
Well, in the past few months, we've seen, of course, a huge uptick in global campaigns of repression by Western states, primarily targeting the Palestine Solidarity Movement. We talked on the stream a couple weeks ago about activist and social media user Sarah Wilkinson and how her home was raided by UK, quote, anti-terror police. Ali has been banned by Germany in an attempt to stop him from speaking about the genocide. What do you think accounts for this upsurge in repression right now? As you know, as you mentioned, I mean, the public, has overwhelmingly been in support of Palestine actionists, and yet, Keir Starmer's government is trying to just throw the entire book at them. A question for you both, but let's start with Max.
The victories that we're getting are not victories that have been normally associated with the solidarity movement. Victories, and it's not just here in the UK, people who use direct action tactics against Israeli targets win. We had an amazing victory of an Israeli weapons facility in Cambridge, Massachusetts, being forced to shutter its doors 2 weeks ago. This followed a sustained direct action campaign. This type of repeated action and showing up over and over and over again is has always been a blueprint for victory. And these types of victories, which go again, which fly in the face of U.S. imperialism, are really scary to the U.S. state and its clients.
Yeah. Huda, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Elbit's days are numbered in this country, and they know that. When you can't secure your facilities, when people continue to occupy, break in, and destroy your weaponry, there's only so much you can take. We've seen they've been forced to sell and shut down several factories already. And I think they are on the edge of leaving this country for good. And I think the state is responding to try and protect them. And when you've already imprisoned people, and that hasn't worked, when you take people to court and remove their right to lawful defenses to argue that their crime is unlawfully, to uphold international law, to prevent the greater crime, and that doesn't work to stop people, then terrorism really is the end of the road in terms of tactics that the state can try and use to try and deter people from taking this type of action. So I think actually they've just shown that we are closer than ever before to victory, to getting rid of Elbit Systems in this country, and they're desperate to stop us. We know that Elbit have complained about the detrimental impact we are having to their business, and they're showing that through these prosecutions. And I forgot to mention before, but today at Richard's hearing, it was confirmed that Labour's Attorney General was the one, as Max said, it's Labour's government who authorised these charges. We haven't seen people be detained under the Terrorism Act until Labour came into power. And we haven't seen these type of charges be brought against people until Labour's Attorney General consented to Richard being charged under the Terrorism Act. So this government is desperate to protect Elbit Systems. But at this point, we're at a unique time in history where they are going to do everything to try and stop us. They will put more people in prison. But when you continue at this point, and when you continue to grow, which we are as a movement, that's when Elbit realized that they have to leave this country. Nothing is going to stop us.
Yeah.
Huda, you, before you co-founded Palestine Action, you were a campaigns officer at the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, which is a well-known organization in the UK. It organizes large marches. You worked on different kinds of campaigning methods, such as lobbying politicians and institutions. And of course, those are things that people still do and that are in themselves valuable. But what lessons have you learned after being involved in a variety of tactics over the years? And can you talk about where you see different tactics fitting into this movement at this time?
Yeah, so my experience at PSC really was a major part of my campaigning life that spurred me on to taking direct action and to starting Palestine Action with other like-minded people. And I think you get to a point when you realize you're trying the same tactics over and over again. And despite the limitations of what you're doing, you're told to just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And there's a lot of respectability politics to play as well when it comes to these politicians. And you're banging yourself against a brick wall constantly and not getting results, or not getting results that match the severity of what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. And I think it was really those limitations that are set by these kind of bigger organizations that led me to taking direct action against Israel's weapons trade. Because I was just sick and tired of, I'd done lots of research against institutions, their investments in these companies, pointing out the hypocrisy against their own ethical investment policies, lobbying politicians, armed embargo campaign to stop arming Israel, and you're constantly getting the same feedback, the same lack of interest, or deliberate lack of interest, because there was a heavy Israel lobby at play, and told to do the same thing. And I just believe that when we have Israeli weapons factories operating in our doorstep, and rather than beg someone to stop killing our brothers and sisters in Palestine, I could just go up there, like many people have done in Palestine Action, and just go shut them down ourselves. And we have done that. And to be honest, it's the most, it's strange to say, but it's liberating. And it's very empowering when you let go of those constraints. We're often told, just ask nicely, be respectable to the politicians, and maybe they'll try and stop killing our brothers and sisters in Palestine. That has not worked. And actually, when you realize that you have power in yourself to go climb on a ladder or break into a factory, and you can literally destroy the site and stop them from operating, then that's what we need to go ahead and do. And so I think direct action is there is a place for everything in this movement, but direct action plays a significant part, and the whole movement needs to be supportive of each other. And that includes, when we're facing repression like we're facing in Palestine Action, what the state tries to do is isolate parts of the movement from other parts. They're trying to say, look, we're using counterterrorism powers against people. They're testing the waters to see how the wider movement reacts. And stand in solidarity with one another and don't allow them to isolate certain parts of our movement. That's when the state fails. And that's when they back down as well, because they realize the amount of support that we have for each other within this movement. And there needs to be a lot more of that for the bigger organizations towards groups like Palestine Action, especially at this point in time.
I can just reflect listening to you, Huda. I remember the aftermath of 9/11. I don't like to think about 9/11 very much, but after the September 11, 2001 attacks, there was a great deal of repression in the United States, and the Bush administration went particularly after Palestinian Americans who had absolutely nothing to do with the September 11th attacks, but there was a wave of prosecutions, the Holy Land Five, there were other cases.
Who are still in jail. Yeah,
who are still in prison for decades for raising money for charities that were also funded by the United States government in Palestine. And there was the case of Samuel Arian and the repression his family went through. There was the case of the late Mohammed Salah and
Neil O'Day.
Right, and Abdul Halim Ashkar and other cases, and there are others I'm not mentioning. But what I remember about that period was how much fear there was in the community, and how much fear there was even to come forward and support these people who were facing this repression. And the isolation that they felt was certainly helped the government. And I'm not saying that fear was unjustified. It was a real atmosphere of terror. I'm often shocked when I shouldn't be shocked. I hear a lot of Americans, what they call normies, say, oh, I wish we could go back to the spirit after 9/11 where everyone was united. No, it was a period of fear and terror for large communities in the United States. And what the point I want to get to is eventually that fear broke and people started to support each other. And that made an enormous difference in subsequent efforts by the government to isolate people, to subpoena them, raiding homes and so on. People started to come out and support each other, and that defeated, in many cases, those government repression efforts. So just listening to you, I'm reflecting on that experience that we had in the United States after 9/11 and the importance of solidarity, the importance of people showing up when there are trials, showing up in court, showing up outside the court. I mean, judges, of course, I'm not advocating that anyone should unduly influence a judicial process, but judges are human, juries are human. When they see that there is broad support for someone who's being accused, it makes them think, hang on, what's going on here? This isn't just some sort of common criminal, but there's a bigger story here that is driving a lot of people to care about what's going on here. And I've heard it many times that public support makes an enormous difference. So I'm hearing something similar from you, I think. Go ahead, yes. Max.
Can I just say one thing? I was struck during Nora's, as I often am during Nora's news rundowns, of just how, if you try and make sense about a dad finding his daughter face down with her roller skate, nothing like that you can never make sense of anything, this horror. But, since Palestine Action started, we've had over 500 actions. 500 different direct actions, and it makes sense to people. It makes sense to people who are watching a genocide to take action, take matters into their own hands. It is something that allows us to process what we're seeing. We're seeing something so horrible, so I have to do something that I've never done before. And almost 1,000 different people in the UK have come to the same conclusion. And it's truly inspirational to be a part of. We are doing something that no one has ever done before. The diversity of tactics that we're deploying, whether you are a truck company, a computer company, a cleaning company, if you contract with Elbit, you can expect Palestine Action. It has become extremely difficult for the Israeli war machine to do business in the UK. And this is a model that is repeatable everywhere. And everyone is getting the same images across their phones and their computer screens every morning. And the tactics that we have been deploying are working. And they are not only working, but they are reasonable given what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think you said that so well. I mean, the visceral, the physical reaction that many of us around the world have to seeing this genocide being live streamed 24 hours a day for nearly 12 months now, a whole year, and people feel obligated to do something about it, especially when we see the people in power in the UK and here in the US, trying to get us to replace action with just, platitudes and words that resemble some sort of empathy, while still handing over these MK48, whatever, bunker buster bombs that are obliterating children, sleeping families in their tents on the sea. I mean, it's just, it makes you feel like you're going crazy. And so to be able to channel that into action, I mean, obviously that's incredibly powerful for people. And for those who can't put their bodies on the line like that, what are some ways, what are some other, diversity of tactics you mentioned? What are some ways that people can be involved in groups like Palestine Action without, smashing up weapons factories directly?
Well, there were many. Go on, Holly.
I was going to say, although I'm not going to ask that question because we might get the program might get nuked. Go ahead and answer Laura's question.
I think
Nonviolent, direct action. That route. Yeah.
Well, you do. Let me put the question this way: you do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Which have been now habitually ruled by British courts to be entirely legal and justifiable. If people want to get involved in the whole range of things you do, including prisoner support, and other forms of activity, could be helping to publicize the work you do, organize support for it, educate people about the crimes Elbit is committing, about against Palestinians in Gaza. How do they learn more about what you do? How do they get in touch? What are the ways that people can get involved through the whole diversity of ways that you work?
So one of them is showing up for the trials, as you mentioned. We have them all across the country. So really, like wherever you are, there will be something coming up near you, up to those court cases. You can stand outside waving a flag, or you can come inside the public gallery, watch the court cases happening. You can join police station support, so supporting the activists once they get held in police stations and released. We actually are going to hold support workshops that people can join. We also hold training days on direct action and online workshops. So visit our website. There's a workshops page where you can see the different types of ways that you can get involved. I say, if you're not here, for us with the political prisoners especially and the attacks on our movement, one of the ways is speaking up about them, making it visible, making it known that these people are sacrificing their liberty right now for the Palestinian people, and to make them visible, because obviously one of the main tactics of the state is to isolate people, is to put them behind bars, is to withhold them from being able to have postcards and make phone calls. But we can defeat that by making their faces, their names, and what they've done visible, and that's a really crucial part of showing solidarity with the political prisoners, both here in Britain and, of course, the prisoners in Palestine.
That's exactly it. And yeah, go ahead, Max.
I would also just say that no matter where you are watching this live stream or listening to it, there is a action you can take locally against Elbit. No matter what, even if your cause isn't Palestine, Elbit is involved in repression around the world. From the US-Mexico border to securing mines in the Congo to Azerbaijan and Armenia, these Elbit drones are sold to the world's most repressive governments to assist in the most extractivist and awful activities imaginable. So it's important to understand that the role Elbit plays in repression worldwide. I mean, one of the things Ali led off by saying is how local communities respond. The first major victory Palestine Action had was in a Kashmiri predominant area here in the UK, when the locals found out that Modi was buying Elbit drones to repress Kashmiris back home. They came out in force, and it became not just a Palestinian issue, but a Kashmiri issue, a local issue, and that was instrumental in that victory. And that's not unique to any one community here in the UK. I promise, if you are doing work locally, you are working with a community that's being affected by Elbit drones.
Well, Huda and Max, it has been fantastic to hear everything that's going on, and you are clearly posing a serious challenge to the British state and its involvement in this genocide of the Palestinian people. And last week, of course, we had Matt Kennard on from Declassified UK, who talked about how, although Britain is a relatively small, insignificant country, it plays an outsized role in this genocide. And you are there challenging that role on the ground. So we thank you for giving us all this information. And of course, we remind people that they can find out more at palestineaction.org or by following you on social media. And there's lots of ways they can get involved. And we hope you'll come back again and give us another update soon.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you
So
so
good
much.
to see both of you. Thanks for all you do.